this ticker text. Stay with me. There it is. Thank you, everybody, for joining me for this live emergency weather report. We have a very complex severe weather event that's about to unfold across the southeastern U.S., and in fact, it's already begun with that blob of convection that's over the far northeastern corner of the Gulf of Mexico. I do expect that blob to drift over the northern Florida peninsula through this afternoon. Very low-end severe weather threat expected with that blob. I was thinking that maybe some water spouts might be able to meander onshore near the Florida Big Bend, but I am backing off of that just a little bit because it does appear that MCS is starting to drift a little bit off to the southeast. I do think that overall the greatest threat for severe weather threat is going to begin later on tonight. This is the loop of the 13ZHRRR showing you that convective blob over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, initially drifting off to the southeast. Some of that heavy rainfall sliding over the northern Florida peninsula through this afternoon. That's the only daytime potential expected for today. And then right at about sunset tonight, the main event is going to begin across southeastern Louisiana. You can see it right at the very tail end of this model loop. And I just don't think that the instability is going to be able to migrate onshore across the Florida panhandle during the afternoon hours today. It is possible that by late evening or maybe beginning as early as near sunset, it does look like that surface-based instability starts to migrate onshore near the Florida Big Bend area, an area that even has black bear down in that zone around Apalachicola, an area that I've covered a lot of tropical events, some of these coastal severe weather events as well. A lot of times these modes with the blobs or the MCSs that'll form over the northern Gulf of Mexico, they usually end up being very frustrating from a storm chaser perspective. They keep getting dominated by thunderstorm outflow, reinforced by the outflow as well. A lot of times they have stable air along the northern periphery, and they just keep sliding off to the southeast and eventually end up in the central Florida peninsula, way out of position for the main event. So right at the very end of this loop, and I'm going to loop the storm relative helicity. Notice the very minor 0 to 1 kilometer shear that's in place across the Gulf Coast, Florida Peninsula, maybe the northern Florida Peninsula there with that ahead of that convective blob might get some very marginal low-level shear, marginally supportive of some water spouts coming on shore, maybe near the Cedar Key area. But I just don't have very high hopes on the afternoon mode today, and I think that all that would do is just get me out of position for the main event. But notice that ramp up over southeastern Alabama right at the end of that loop. That's the beginning of the main event. So I see a pretty complex severe weather event that's going to unfold across the enhanced risk area. You can see the tornado probabilities over here to the right, maximized over southern Georgia down through northwestern Florida, really centered over the Tallahassee area, no Hatch area. So I do expect the first mode of low-end severe weather that's going to be associated with that blob of convection, or the MCS, over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, drifting over northern Florida. Maybe a couple water spouts or special weather statements with the more intense storms expected with that mode. I am monitoring it on radar as well here. Just looks like your classic northern Gulf of Mexico rain blob. Just absolutely textbook here. If you end up chasing this, you'll probably find yourself out of position for the main event. You've got all this rainfall out ahead of it as well, helping to really eliminate the surface-based instability available for these storms. Do have a special weather statement west of St. Augustine. But look at all this stratiform rain dominating the Florida Big Bend. I just don't anticipate a reinvigoration of convection over the Florida Panhandle, moving into this stable air and having really any kind of severe weather threat. Maybe the southern gradient of some of these storms over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico might have a chance of producing a water spout near the Cedar Key area as that moves ashore. But really the surface low needs to get going over southeastern Louisiana and then start to eject over southeastern Alabama, southwestern Georgia, eventually into central Georgia. And that is the second mode, and that's going to be the main event. That's going to be associated with that main surface low track. That's the part that we are going to be breaking down right now. I think that's also the mode that I'm going to be chasing. And the Storm Prediction Center didn't expand those higher probabilities further north to account for the mode that's going to be coupled for that surface low. Just too much uncertainty with regard to the evolution of surface-based instability, and will that enough surface-based instability reach up to that surface low? Will a supercell be able to couple with that surface low, especially across southern Alabama into southwestern Georgia and eventually into central Georgia, and then launching up into even central South Carolina by daybreak on Saturday? That's going to be the main event. I believe a supercell is probably going to couple with that intensifying surface low just as it starts to pivot out of southeastern Alabama into central Georgia and then eventually launching up into central South Carolina. I think there's going to be a couple very fast-moving supercells that will couple with that surface low, and I have to decide whether I want to get on that surface low early southeastern Alabama into the Columbus, Georgia area, or do I wait until daybreak near the Savannah River, near central Georgia, central South Carolina for that fast-moving QLCS, a couple of renegade supercells as well to arrive by Saturday morning? Or do I target the third mode? Some messy renegades, clusters of supercells that are going to develop to the south and to the southwest of that surface low. That'll be over southern Georgia into northwestern Florida and the Florida Panhandle, and that's really what the 10% risk is for. A greater coverage, a greater confidence in the tornado threat down there, but I think that there is a threat of a strong tornado or two if a supercell is able to couple with that ejecting surface low. So now I'm going to break down each of these target areas in great detail, and then I'm going to make my decision with you as to which mode I need to cover and exactly what to do as well. So thank you everybody for joining me for this weather report. I am going to be storm chasing this event. There's also a couple of setups in the long range near the Arklatex as well around March 18 or so, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. We'll take a look at some of those in the long range with an ejection of that storm system across portions of Dixie Alley as well. We're going to take a look mainly at the 12Z HRRR at 3 kilometer NAM for the convective allowing models to really show you how this system is going to evolve. But a very complex system certainly is about to happen, and I think I'm going to be targeting that surface low late night tonight with any supercells that might be able to couple with that surface low southeastern Alabama through central Georgia, or I might even just wait in central South Carolina for daybreak on Saturday and chase that fast-moving squall line with embedded tornado potential expected as well. So here you can see the 12Z HRRR 500 millibar pattern. This is this morning at 12Z Friday. Go forward to about 20Z. And this is that perturbation, that jet streak that's coming around. This is actually the suppressed subtropical jet down here. So we do have a little bit of split flow that has emerged with the polar front jet lifting off to the north across southwestern Canada. And then you have this little subtropical disturbance, a little bit of a phasing of the two jets happening across northern Mexico and Texas. So here's your parent jet streak that by Friday afternoon is finally going to start to be impinging on coastal Texas, and that's going to lead to rapid cyclogenesis at the low levels, starting first just off the coast of Sabine Pass. That's where you start to get the evidence of that surface low developing, stepping forward to 0Z, and there it shows up, southeastern Louisiana, a front back behind it as well. And this surface low is going to rapidly intensify as it ejects through southeastern Alabama, central Georgia, eventually up into central South Carolina by daybreak on Saturday, and then lifting all the way up through the Carolina Piedmont. There is some evidence that some instability could come ashore late morning or morning hours on Saturday into the early afternoon across the North Carolina Outer Banks as well. But watch this surface low deepen. 1,007 millibars at 2Z. That's like 9 p.m. By about midnight, the surface low really begins to deepen over southeastern Alabama just before midnight, about a 10 to 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. and then it's down to about 1,000 millibars over southwestern Georgia. It does look like, as compared to yesterday, that this is a slower intensification of that surface low. It is going to be approaching the Savannah River by about 9Z and really starting to deepen. Finally, it drops below 1,000 millibars on approach to South Carolina. There is that surface low right into central South Carolina. It is going to be associated with a fast-moving convective line QLCS regime. By about 11Z, very close to sunrise, the surface low is going to be located near Florence, South Carolina, a little bit to the west of there, just northeast of Columbia. Looks like the front surges through the Columbia area. And then the severe weather potential begins to ramp up across eastern South Carolina. It's also going to be associated with about a 70, 80 knot low-level jet punching into southeastern South Carolina. Could easily target the nose of that low-level jet on Saturday as well. There is that QLCS pattern. A bit more stratiform precipitation, some winter precip too across the spine of the Appalachians, the southern Appalachians as well, near the Tennessee-North Carolina border up through Virginia. I'm going to be targeting the warm sector. By this time, I would 11Z. This will be about 6, 7 a.m. on Saturday. If I were to wait here in South Carolina, I'd want to be on this fast-moving storm with tornado potential across the north central portion of the state that's going to rapidly move into southeastern North Carolina by Saturday morning. It looks like there could be some embedded supercells within this as well as it moves into eastern North Carolina with that 70-knot low-level jet. Invigorating as it approaches coastal South Carolina. This is about 8 in the morning Eastern Standard Time with this fast-moving QLCS. This is at 9 a.m. moving through eastern North Carolina. Some of these will have tornado potential as well over southeastern North Carolina, back into the Myrtle Beach area, coastal South Carolina as well during the late morning hours as that fast-moving squall line is going to be approaching Cape Fear, approaching the North Carolina Outer Banks. The HRRR is definitely showing the potential of supercell modes and a QLCS with this fast-moving line. And there's also going to be that 80-knot low-level jet just ahead of it. Look at that, over the North Carolina Outer Banks. Wow. That is intense. And look at it, Cape Hatteras. Photographs are insane. Definitely a hint at some stable air that's going to be at the low levels. But likely with that fast-moving QLCS just pounding into that environment, it is going to be a pretty dangerous mode. That's going to be the fourth mode. The third mode we were talking about was the mode of renegades over southern Georgia, but I first want to go over southeastern Alabama. The rate at which the intensification of the surface low happens is slower than when we were looking at the models yesterday. Now at 3Z tonight, this is at about 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, surface low over south central Alabama. It's likely going to be a little bit decoupled from the instability as well. Yesterday, during the briefing, we were showing a more favorable environment right up near that surface low by late night tonight. Because of this blob over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, it pushes that surface-based instability deeper into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. So you're really not seeing that environment ramp up near that fast-moving surface low over southeastern Alabama just yet. This is just prior to midnight. You start to get that surface-based instability coming ashore near the Florida Big Bend area into northwestern Florida around midnight. So do I head to the Florida Big Bend and cover this late-night mode when everybody's asleep midnight into the early morning hours on Saturday? Or do I wait patiently up here in central South Carolina for the surface low to arrive to deepen? Could be more of a Saturday morning event over eastern North Carolina into eastern South Carolina. But here comes the instability. Looks pretty maximized in the early morning hours tonight, about 3, 4 in the morning across the Florida Big Bend. That's going to be the third mode that we can target. There's also going to be this mode of renegades that develops across northwestern Florida into southern Georgia. These also will have some daybreak potential. But look at the surface low here that's chugging along this boundary. Doesn't look like supercells are going to be able to latch on to that surface low, at least if you buy the 12Z morning model guidance. You do still have this QLCS, though, that forms. You'd want to be out ahead of this, probably central South Carolina, maybe the northeastern portion of the state, getting ready to position ahead of that. But you've also got these renegades that are going to be approaching the Florida Big Bend, and you know there's going to be surface-based instability available to those. This is at 9Z, showing a messy mode, but supercell storms developing across northwestern Florida into south central Georgia. And there's going to be ample instability available for this squall line. But then the QLCS really starts to take shape across central South Carolina just prior to sunrise. A lot of rainfall across the upstate South Carolina and the Carolina Piedmont. Snow on the backside. And that will include the high country, the southern spine of the Appalachians, northwestern Georgia, eastern Tennessee as well. Far western North Carolina will get in on that snow. 995 surface low across north central South Carolina with this QLCS pattern. The northern mode of that QLCS pattern, you might be able to get a fast moving tornado moving by at about 80 miles an hour up there as you head into southeastern North Carolina, northeastern South Carolina. And then this mode of renegades by sunrise continues down near the Cedar Key area. With that convection sliding to the south across Florida. That low-level jet really ramps up with that ejection, that 995 low. And you do have an extension of a 60-knot southwesterly low-level jet that's more parallel to the boundary as that boundary sags into northern Florida by sunrise tomorrow. I do expect tornadoes as well across northern Florida. Eventually, it's in the set by late morning. That's all the way down into the central Florida peninsula. The low-level jet is now over the very eastern tip of the Outer Banks. Let me get rid of my head here so that you can see that low-level jet ejecting with the surface low over the Outer Banks by late morning. Timing is going to be very difficult with this. I'm leaning toward working this low-level jet nose up near the North Carolina, South Carolina border by daybreak on Saturday. Somewhere around that area, rather than burying myself 2, 3, 4 in the morning near the Florida Big Bend, down near Cedar Key, and then hearing about the fast-moving, 80-mile-per-hour moving tornadoes embedded within that QLCS moving through northeastern South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Timing is difficult. This is a very difficult event to chase, but you can definitely see this very favorable shear environment across northwestern Florida just prior to sunrise tomorrow. That is your most favorable environment across south central Georgia into northwestern Florida. You could pick on some forecast soundings there as well, showing you a very favorable hodograph, abundance of surface-based instability. That hodograph just near my head shows you your 1 kilometer wind, 60 knots. That's your low-level jet just above the ground, southwest and northeast, 1 kilometer wind, 60 knots. Meanwhile, your surface wind, south-southwest at about 18 knots, creates a very large hodograph. The area contained within that hodograph curve and the storm motion vector, that's proportional to your storm relative helicity, pushing 400. An abundance of surface-based instability, too. Not that shallow stable layer that you see over eastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. Quite a bit of cape down across northwestern Florida, and even a little bit of a bird fart of an elevated mixed layer, a little dry pocket. Notice just a little bit of separation between the red and the green line being dew point, the red being temperature. Just a little bit of a dry pocket coming in aloft. Certainly does support a tornado potential. But you're just not going to get that surface-based instability ejecting into South Carolina for sure in time for that surface low. It does look like over the North Carolina Outer Banks you start to get it. Maybe coastal South Carolina you start to get a little bit more of that instability by 12Z. But a lot more with that energy helicity index down into northwestern Florida. What do you guys think I should do? The instability doesn't quite couple with the surface low in these latest models. Let's see how the HRRR is trending. Look at that energy helicity index down into northwestern Florida. That's at 9Z. Nasty supercells down there across northwestern Florida. That's going to be about 3 in the morning. Looks like a Tallahassee type of an event. So I am, during this morning weather briefing, I'm starting to shift my focus down to this northwestern Florida mode. Northwestern Florida, south central Georgia. With that cluster of supercells that develops down near the Florida Big Bend by 7Z. That's about midnight when that gets going. And you still have this potential situation over southeastern Alabama into southwestern Georgia as well with the surface low, but it seems to outrun the instability a bit. And if I'm down here working the surface low at about 8Z, I could drop south to this cluster of renegades coming out of the Florida Big Bend and intercept those. There still is that ribbon of a low-level jet down in this area. I'm leaning toward just bouncing down to the Tallahassee area near the Florida Big Bend for this one. For this event. Strong low-level jet rounding the Florida Big Bend. Could head down there in the early morning hours and then try to rocket up coastal South Carolina before returning back. I'm leaning toward that solution a little bit. And just monitoring data as I go. Look at this slug of dew points across northwestern Florida into south central Georgia. You do have 60 plus dew points though, all the way up to the surface low as well. That's going to be right near that kink. There's the warm front. There's where the surface low is going to be located by 9Z. 995 low near Augusta, Georgia. Probably with that QLCS still cranking up there. So it looks like it's going to be difficult to chase both. These are more classic supercell storms. Could even get a strong tornado or two down there across northwestern Florida. Looking at your significant tornado parameter. Look at that down across northwest Florida. And that's the trend from the 12Z to the 15Z HRRR PDS tornado soundings down in that environment across northwest Florida. So as I'm breaking this down, that's 440 0 to 1 kilometer shear across northwest Florida. Definitely a mass textbook photograph for strong tornado potential and abundance of cape as well. It looks like we're going to need to target this mode. Just all the bright colors. This is your significant tornado parameter. I usually don't like to look at the updraft helicity, but it does show that surface low track. Southern Alabama, southern Mississippi could have some early tornado warnings leading up to the just before that mode comes in off the Florida Big Bend late night tonight, 2, 3 in the morning. Oh boy, when you see that between 14Z and 15Z HRRR, that's quite an uptick in the convective evolution. These would certainly be tornadic storms moving from northwestern Florida into south central Georgia. Definitely looks like tornadic storms. More of a QLCS, a little bit too far north of the instability. A lot of rain across upstate South Carolina. Let's look at the 3 kilometer NAM. Wow. 12Z 3 kilometer NAM is also showing these renegades coming on shore near the Florida Big Bend after midnight, about 2, 3 in the morning tonight. Moving into south central Georgia, 10Z, 11Z. And then you have this skinnier squall line moving through eastern South Carolina. The 3 kilometer NAM is definitely encouraging more of that robustness of convection down into northwestern Florida along the southwestern ribbon of that low-level jet. 60, 70 knot winds there as well. Stronger low-level jet, though, into eastern South Carolina. But it's not as much instability up there. You start to realize that instability near Cape Fear area, eastern North Carolina. There is an enhanced risk tomorrow as well, but that's mainly to cover tomorrow morning. But you do get some surface-based instability that definitely comes ashore across eastern South Carolina. Definitely the environment hugging that Florida Big Bend tonight. 2, 3 in the morning, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Certainly could get those supercells chugging ashore across northwestern Florida. So what do you think I should do based on all this information? Do you think I should wait here in South Carolina for tomorrow morning, eastern South Carolina, eastern North Carolina? Should I drop down into central Georgia and then target that 2, 3 in the morning type of a play down into south central Georgia into northwestern Florida? Should I hang with the surface low as it comes out of southeastern Alabama late night tonight? Or should I just do weather briefings and not chase at all? That's what I'm going through from the storm chaser perspective. Looking at radar with that convective blob across the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. Just an abundance, mainly a rainmaker is what this is going to be. But I could see myself dropping down toward the Valdosta area tonight. It is kind of a long drive from up there, but I have been activated by AccuWeather to cover this as well. Live stream. I do want to deploy some gravity wave sensors as well across the Florida Big Bend. But this convective blob, this MCS, is certainly going to prevent instability from coming ashore across the Florida Panhandle during the afternoon hours. You just have to get down near Cedar Key, Ocala, Homosassa Springs down there on the southeastern periphery of this. But you can see you're getting rain now upstream of this convective blob. Marginal wind shear. Really, we're going to need late night tonight after midnight. Once that cyclogenesis begins to happen over southeastern Alabama, it's going to pull that environment ashore across northwestern Florida. Take a look at the wrap really quick. There's the enhanced risk. Snow event happening across Oklahoma. There's also an enhanced risk for tomorrow, but this is going to be all Saturday morning. Even all the way up into southeastern Virginia, and the southern tip of Delmarva is included in that enhanced risk. Slide this over to the right so that you can see it. There's the enhanced risk for Saturday morning. Only a slight down into northwestern Florida. So if I did head down into the Florida Big Bend, you'd basically be talking about that window from about 2 a.m. until sunrise with that strong tornado potential. And then by Saturday morning, that threat will shift across coastal South Carolina, coastal North Carolina, southeastern Virginia as well. Very difficult event to chase. I can't stress that enough. You're going to have to be very skilled to dig any footage out of this for sure. There's your surface-based instability over the northeastern Gulf, mainly along and to the south of that blob of convection. That's where your instability is waiting. So let's take this out with time. Forecast this out about 6 hours to 23Z. Start to get some surface-based instability beginning to appear ahead of that shortwave over south central Alabama. Very complex severe weather events going to unfold tonight through tomorrow. This is a forecast at 23Z, which is about 5 p.m. this evening. You can start to see that convection developing over southern Louisiana. See that across southern Louisiana. You start to get the bubbling up over the Gulf, offshore of Texas. That's when you finally start to get cyclogenesis off the Sabine Pass area. And then that low is going to lift through southern Mississippi, southern Alabama. You can start to see that surface-based instability start to form across southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, ahead of that jet streak. But boy, does the surface-based instability mainly remain offshore. Marginal shear environment to the southeast of the blob. You're talking about 100 0 to 1 kilometer shear across Cedar Key, areas across the northern Florida peninsula. Maybe an isolated waterspout or special weather statement with that mode. But boy, this MCS over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico is definitely going to help to curtail the surge of surface-based instability up to that surface low track. And it might end up just being that mode of renegades across northwest Florida, the eastern Florida panhandle, into south central Georgia between about 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. early Saturday morning. That might be the only mode worth chasing down there. So, thank you everybody for tuning into this weather report. Very complex event to chase, but I am going to be chasing some mode with this event and also streaming live. I just have to decide whether I target the renegades across southern Georgia into the Florida panhandle. Do I target any supercells that are able to couple with that ejecting surface low southeastern Alabama through southern Georgia and eventually into South Carolina by daybreak near the Florence area? After doing this morning weather briefing, I'm leaning slightly toward chasing the renegades, northwestern Florida, Tallahassee, up toward Valdosta, Georgia, Tallahassee, Florida area up to Valdosta. I just think that there could even be some tornadic damage as well in the early morning hours. And that's what I'm going to be leaning as well for my field coverage and for the science. I've got these gravitron sensors that are charged up and ready to deploy. I had these ready to go for Iowa just a couple of days ago for the Winterset EF4. I'm going to be flex taping these to poles again ahead of any long-lived tornadoes or even damaging tornadoes to try to sample the really high-resolution pressure data from those gravity waves that might be getting emitted as the tornado is moving into the atmosphere. It's compressing the atmosphere, sends out waves, gravity waves out in advance. That's what we're also trying to measure with these. So I'm looking forward to also doing some science again late night tonight through Saturday morning. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this weather report. Thank you, Facebook supporters, as well, for supporting this science and also for riding along in my passenger seat these last 3 years. I could do a live Q&A exclusively for Facebook supporters during my drive down to the Florida Panhandle. That's kind of my plan, is to do a live Q&A, live discussion of this very complex severe weather setup. And as the new models come out, we'll just have to see if that surface low is able to get more abundant instability as well. Definitely going to be a 2 to 3 in the morning type of an event across the Florida Panhandle into southern Georgia. That's going to be the likely mode 3 as we identified. So thank you everybody for tuning into this weather report. Happy Friday. Never stop chasing.